have it later. I just want to take a moment to introduce Rick Van Diepen, and you were speaking today on the topic of emergency homeless solutions. And I just want to say high five. Thank you so much for joining us so that we can learn and grow on this critical topic. It's dear to my heart, just from where I come from in California originally. And I don't want to hesitate to give you all the space to share all of your knowledge and experience with our group.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you again, Craig, for putting me together with your group here. I'm really excited and honored that so many innovators would want to hear about this topic and hear about what we're doing on a day-to-day basis to kind of put a dent in homelessness. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. One moment, please.
You're doing great. I'm just glad I remembered to give you permissions.
Yeah. Okay, does that look okay?
Beautiful.
Okay. So just to give you guys a really short little background, I'm a commercial architect. I've been working in Las Vegas for like 26 years. And about 8 years ago, I started a sustainability consulting firm. So we do green building certifications and general, sustainability consulting. And a lot of it has been to commercial clients, but also in the last couple of years, we've moved into multifamily housing, both market rate and also affordable housing. So we've, helped those developers basically design and work with their architects as well, help them to design more green, sustainable buildings. And through some of my kind of volunteer work in downtown Las Vegas, I was on a committee looking at chronic homelessness, and we did a lot of research into different models around the country that can, that are dealing with shelter in a more holistic way, in a more unique way, meeting people where they're at, is kind of the phrase that you'll hear. And it was a really eye-opening experience because, I had often wondered like why we have, like these big shelters and food kitchens and all of these resources. However, there's still, tent encampments. There's still people sleeping on the streets, and and I think the immediate, response is that, well, those people are service resistant, right? They've got an addiction and they just don't want help, and some people you can't help. That's true for maybe like 5% of the homeless population. However, what we learned through all this research and talking with chronically homeless individuals is that there are barriers to shelters, the traditional shelter, and those barriers to those of us on the call here, they might feel like a 2-inch step or something, right? But every one of these barriers that you put up to a homeless person who's been going through trauma, who's been, if you've lived on the streets, you've gone through trauma. What's it like to sleep outdoors in inclement weather and constantly be worried about getting beat up or raped or killed, right? Like you can only do that for so long, and then you're dealing with trauma. So what they did in San Francisco, through a friend of a friend, introduced me to a contractor in San Francisco who had a contract to build an emergency shelter. And this is a new model. It's called a navigation center, homeless navigation center. And they needed an architect really quick who's licensed in California. And so my friend told him, hey, Rick's really into this stuff. I think it'd be a good fit. So that's how I got involved. It was really serendipitous, however, my heart was definitely in it, and there was a need. So I kind of jumped in with both feet, and it was a really great experience. So I'm going to show you a handful of projects, and I'm also going to talk about some of these bigger picture items, these barriers and these navigation centers that are really designed to break down those barriers, right? So a 2-inch step to us on the phone on this call may as well be like an 8-foot fence for every one of these folks that are trying to get back on their feet. They lost their they lost their ID. They lost, some belongings. They've got a health issue. They don't have transportation. There's a bunch of these things. And when you sort of stack those all on top of each other, and it's a regular occurrence, they might have a bench warrant, all kinds of things. All of a sudden it becomes a big barrier. And then these institutions that are doing shelter, it becomes like, it's too much hassle. It's too much, I don't feel like anybody really cares about me. I'm going through trauma, and you're putting up all of these barriers and all these rules. So that's really what this was meant. The Navigation Center was meant to address. This was the study we did with the city of Las Vegas, where we looked at a bunch of different municipalities around the country that looked at chronic homelessness and different ways that they're dealing with it. Whether it's a tiny tiny home village, it could be what's called bridge housing, little Conestoga huts like the one on the right here, just open air, not conditioned. And I have personally a real problem with saying that like, well, you're getting off the street and you're getting out of a tent, so putting you in a basically a glorified tough shed, you should be happy with that because it's a big step up, right? And I think logically that does kind of make sense, right? This is better than what they have. However, as a citizen, as a community member, why do we get to choose what's dignified housing and what's not dignified housing, right? For people that have been going through this stuff. So that's something that I had a real problem with, is kind of treating homeless people like you need to earn your way to housing. Somehow you're not worthy. You made some life decisions that got you in trouble, so it's your responsibility to get your way out of it. But the fact of the matter is, providing housing to chronically homeless is like something like 60% less expensive than paying for taxpayers to pay all of the consequent costs, court costs and getting arrested and healthcare, all of this stuff. So it really is a good investment to do this and to get people into permanent housing, permanent supportive housing. I'm going to go through this really quick, but the charge that we had as this citizen advisory committee was really to look at this population, that they're chronically homeless, and find out what their needs are and why they're not getting met by the shelter services that are out there now, and to implement a bold and visionary, possibly a disruptive plan. So that was really great to hear that from the mayor of Las Vegas, saying, we want to get some blank done here. So you guys need to put your heads together and come up with some solutions. So it was really great to hear that kind of leadership. I mentioned some of these barriers that are out there, right? But in downtown Las Vegas, they were specifically having problems with homeless walking around the streets, basically putting themselves in harm's way. There's a lot of traffic and everything. But also, like, the police are really limited what they can do, right? If someone's trespassing or if they're loitering, all you can do is basically arrest them, or cite them. So now they've got a warrant, and it's just a spiraling problem. So giving them a place where they can bring people and get them the services they need all in one place was really key to the whole navigation model being successful. There's also, there are a lot of do-gooders, a lot of nonprofits out there, church groups and everything. They're like, hey, we want to go downtown and feed the homeless. Well, there's a lot of health problems with that. There's a lot of, waste and trash and everything that goes along with that. So there's a lot of education that kind of went along with, letting people know that the best thing you can do is invest in, more wraparound services and actually, finding solutions to homelessness instead of just sort of giving money and sandwiches. And there's just a lot of difficulties as well, where traditional shelters are men and women, right? They're segregated. Well, there's a large cross section of people that they've, like I said, they've been living through trauma. Maybe they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or something, and that's their basic source of strength and insanity. keeping them together. Well, if you go to a shelter, you have to go to in different dorms. So that alone is really tough. And believe it or not, bringing pets, something like 90% of battered women, if they can bring their pet with them, they will not go back to the abuser. Just that alone, right? They don't want to leave because they don't want their animal to get hurt or left behind, right? So they stay with an abusive partner. And some shelters actually require a breathalyzer test to get a cot at night, right? Well, what if you had 2 beers that afternoon? Is that fair that you have to live on the street? So again, these barriers are really huge. So what we did is we really collected all of these barriers, and we developed a list of like, hey, how can we break all these down, get all these things in one place? And one of the models that we found that was very successful is the drop-in navigation center. Some of them have small units, some of them are large, more insulated tent structures, like a traditional dorm. But I'll show you in a minute how we broke that up a little bit. But it had storage. We have a area for dogs and cats, and public space, a place where people can hang out during the day, right? Because one of the problems is you go, you sleep there, they kick you out at 8 in the morning, you can eat breakfast, and then they're like, okay, now go mill around on the streets until the next meal, right? Well, that really is a detriment to the neighborhood. It's tough on local businesses, all of that. So the navigation center allows people to stay. They have a permanent, basically, place to stay for 90 days or more. And then there's the tiny house villages. There are some of those that are really good. Some of them are not so well governed. However, there's a continuum of there's a whole menu of solutions, right, that we need to look at. It's emergency housing, it's bridge housing, it could be some tiny houses, it could be renovated motels, which we do a lot of in Las Vegas. It could be just renovating derelict houses, group homes. The problem is so huge that we just need all the solutions we can get, right? And also building new affordable housing for very, very low income people. So we need all of this stuff. However, we also need to deal with getting people out of a traumatic situation, get them stabilized so they can start moving towards permanent housing. One of the models we looked at was the HUD Safe Havens program. These are tiny house villages, but they're just meant to be smaller groups, 25 to 30 people, no drug use. It's self-policed, and there's on-site services. Caseworkers come to help people out. They have on-site NA and AA meetings. It's a good situation, and it's really good for those people that are like, hey, I don't, for whatever reason, whatever my barriers are, I need a place that's not a shelter situation. So we're doing one of these in Sacramento. Actually, we're doing 2 of these in Sacramento right now for the city of Sacramento, and I'll show that at the end of the presentation. This was the first project that I talked about in downtown San Francisco. This is the Division Circle. So that's I believe it's the 101 freeway that goes to the Bay Bridge there. This is about a mile from City Hall. And this was literally a cloverleaf circle, an on-ramp to the freeway. And Caltrans, California Department of Transportation, just stored their state vehicles on this lot. It was just a big parking lot. So the government of California instituted, I think it was about 3 years ago, instituted an emergency declaration that homelessness is an emergency situation, which it is. What that did is it opened up funding, and it also basically opened up a lot of agencies to work together and to collaborate much more openly, right? So, which was a fantastic concept, right? You're putting money behind it. Obviously, you have to do that. However, when the governor says there's like a gigantic forest fire, right? You don't have agencies sending forms to each other and and everything. You set up a command center and you start fighting the fire. That's the way it works. So that's what that's what this declaration did, is it says, hey, you state agencies need to find the land, and you need to build these navigation centers as quickly as possible, and no kidding, make it work. So it was incredible. This project was designed, permitted, and built in less than 5 months in downtown San Francisco. I can't tell you, spending my entire career, as an architect, to see something like this happen is beyond belief. I was in the middle of it, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So it was really heartening to see career bureaucrats saying, hey, how can I help you with this? Hey, here's a problem, let's find a solution for it. Let's get this thing going. We've all, the governor's on my back. So there's that sort of pressure, and also that kind of team dynamic that was just absolutely incredible. So this project is a big dorm building. We have there are partitions in between the beds. There's areas for men and women. There's an area for transgender folks. There's an area for couples. There's a separate dining hall. You can stay here for, I think, 90 days or more. You can hang out here all day long. You've got your own bed that's assigned to you, your own storage area, and you just come here and get stable. And there's all these services that are on site. On-site case managers. There's a little medical clinic, dog kennels, storage, all that stuff. So it's all there. You don't have to take 6 buses around town to get these services. They're all right there. And they also don't have really crazy rules, right? Like they realize that yes, it's a non-smoking facility. However, they have an area where you can smoke. There's no drugs or alcohol on the facility. However, if you go off site, have a couple of beers, as long as you're not belligerent when you come back, they'll let you in. So and those rules are really followed by the residents, because they're like, this is a great thing and I don't want to blow it, so and they'll kick you out, and you lose your spot. So there's no big long lines or anything like that. You literally go in and reserve a place.
Rick, how many, this is absolutely extraordinary, especially like when you were mentioning how the timeline in California. Mm-hmm. Goodness gracious, used to live in California. I get that was miraculous, really, to accomplish that in 5 months. How many people are able to be served? How many beds are there, and what are those numbers like?
Yeah, so this one originally had 100 beds. And then during construction, they were like, wow, we could we fit another small dorm on this site if we really jammed it in there? So we literally had to redesign it and add a second dorm. So this is, and that was a 75 bed dorm that we added. So this is 175 beds that was, like I said, operational in 5 months. And it was actually ready in 4 months. However, there was, kind of some furniture purchasing and different stuff that kind of took longer, so, and they wanted it to be totally perfect before they brought people in, because it was like the first big one that they've done. So now so this design, basically, I want to give credit where it's due. The public works in-house architect at the city of San Francisco really came up with this idea of, first, they did a bunch of like classroom trailers that they just kind of stuck together. That was the first one that they did, and then this one was like, no, let's do a larger insulated, a nice daylit, basically a membrane structure, a tent building, so we can get more people together. Fighting with kind of modular trailers is just it's just not a great space, and it's not very it's just not a great space. So they came up with this idea, and sort of having all of these things on one site. It just absolutely aligned with everything that we've been talking about at the city of Las Vegas. So it was really exciting. They're like, wow, they're implementing what we've been talking about here for the last year. So it was really exciting. So we're going on our 9th navigation center that we built in the last 2 years. going up to Washington, Alaska, and several in California. I'm still fighting with people in Las Vegas to do it here. I don't know what their problem is, but that's another story. So these frames, these are aluminum frames. They get tilted up. They get connected together with these girts, basically these beams. It's super fast, like a matter of days. There's like little aluminum I-beams. There's my wife. We went and visited the one in Sacramento, and then they pull the skin up with an electric winch, basically, and tie it all together. It's all welded seams, super weatherproof, and then there's another layer inside, and it's like 12 inches of bad insulation in the middle. So they're super energy efficient. They're very comfortable, and you can see that white stripe at the top. That's actually a daylight panel. So most of these have a daylight panel in the middle. This, you can't really see it, but it just floods the whole area with daylight. So it's just really a nice space. It's real airy and open and clean, and is not like a shelter that anybody's been in before. So this one's Kern County down in Bakersfield. Same thing, dining facility. And this is a larger one. This one I think is 80 feet wide, and this was a 200-person dorm. And we use modular restrooms and shower buildings. So, we do an ADA ramp, but these things get built off site. They get trailered here, deployed, hooked up to plumbing and electricity and everything. We pour some concrete, for walkways, and, hook up the HVAC system, and it's literally operational. It's like, and then they bring furniture in, and it's super fast. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. I'm going a little fast, sorry. This is my house. We built a 500 square foot, 480 square foot casita for my mother-in-law, who has Alzheimer's and needed to move in with us a couple of years ago. But I show it as another example of I think what's happening a lot in California and other Western states, where zoning regulations are getting changed to allow accessory dwelling units and casitas to be built in a space where it'll fit on a site. So adding more units to single family residential zoning, I think, is going to be absolutely critical, to get. So ours is a multi-generational kind of a solution. However, just as an income source for someone to be able to rent this out, maybe it's Airbnb, maybe it's just a legitimate rental. But I think it is going to be absolutely critical to get more solutions for, for basically cramming more units anywhere we can get them. That's the only way that we're going to address the affordability issue, because it's just such a big issue. It's such a big problem. The last project I want to show here, and I kind of wish I had some renderings, but I showed some earlier, the kind of tiny houses. So these are pre-manufactured aluminum structures. They have rigid insulation on the outside and a metal roof. So they're kind of an industrial strength, tough shed kind of an idea. They have their own little heat pump unit. So it's a heater and an air conditioner. And what we've done here is and these are 100 square feet. So we've actually stacked them together, and there's a 1 hour firewall in between, which is required by code. And these are the group restrooms down here. This is the navigation center where there's offices and case managers that are working out of here. Picnic tables, some shade canopy in this community area. These are the dog kennels down here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. And these are 40-foot Connex storage units, and that's where you store your belongings, And those they're all numbered, and you're given a tag and everything, so you can get your stuff back, and no one's going to steal it.
Rick, would you mind zooming in on that a little bit?
Yeah. Oops. Let's see. Does that help?
That is fantastic.
Yeah. So this is a city-owned kind of a weird triangular, leftover kind of a piece of land that's owned by the city of Sacramento. I think it's their public works department. There's like a water pump station down here in the corner, and they just I think they stored gravel and whatnot in here for the public works department. So they basically moved all that stuff out, and they said, let's just get as many units in here as we can. So so we kind of created these little three little areas that that have, you know, non-gender bathrooms there. Those are just you know, trailer pre-manufactured restrooms. Again, they're, you know, they're hooked up to plumbing and everything. However, they're you know, they show up on site and they're ready to go. You know, we're going to put in some nice things, a little some raised bed gardens, and you know, there's going to be some nice landscaping around the perimeter, planting some shade trees and so forth. So the whole idea is here is really to either, you know, have an individual place, like just having a lockable door is a lot of homeless, chronically homeless folks will say that, you know, just having a place where I can lock the door, you know, and feel safe is a huge step towards getting back to some semblance of normalcy and moving past that trauma. So we have another site that's like twice as big as this, that's going to be like 180 units. This is, or no, 115 units, sorry, and this one is about 50 units. And one other project that we're working on right now is in Stockton. It's at the existing homeless shelter, which is, again, right in the middle of some freeway on-ramps, which is a great place for housing, by the way. You know, it's a leftover spot. Nobody wants to do anything. You'll never get a commercial business in there. They're generally landlocked. And these facilities need almost zero parking, right? So it's a great use of land, of the kind of leftover land. So we're doing a navigation center for men and women. It's 3 stories, and we're building the whole thing out of shipping containers. So that's like and that project just started a couple of weeks ago. So that one's more like it's a vertical navigation center because the site's so small. So we're really kind of looking at any and all opportunities to do this. All of these projects so far have been publicly funded. They're on either state or city-owned land. And you know, that's about the end of the presentation. I'd love to hear any questions that you have and any ideas about how, you know, how to get the private sector involved, because I really do feel like this is a much bigger problem, and we can't just rely on, you know, cities and counties to, you know, it's a diminishing resource, and there's only so much they can do. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
First, I'd just like to say, Rick, thank you. This is really extraordinarily insightful to be able to, you know, see the renderings, to see, you know, to learn a little bit more about how agencies are working together, you know, to accomplish this. It's amazing. And I grew up just south of Stockton. I grew up in Modesto, so I'm like very aware
Modesto.
of wow, small
That's
world.
so funny.
Yeah. So when I talk about homeless people, I mean, I think we had, to give everyone context, Modesto, California is, you know, just an hour and 20 inland from San Francisco, and San Francisco would send their homeless one-way bus tickets to our community. And so, you know, I had a lot of personal interactions with that demographic, and it was absolutely eye-opening to me.
Well, and Modesto is a good example of the affordability, you know, crisis in California, right? I mean, to think that someone would drive 2.5 hours to work in the Bay Area, 2.5 hours each way, you know, to work in San Francisco, and then they buy a house in Modesto because it's the only place where they can find a, you know, a family house. It's just maddening. You know, I can't believe people spend 5 hours a day just on a highway, you know, but that's how insane housing prices are. And that's why a lot of people are homeless. Yeah.
It is very, very wild. We do have some questions, and I want to give preference to those of you who've asked questions in the chat box. And you are also welcome. This is a conversation. We like to have this as a roundtable style, so feel free to also unmute yourself if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, and we get to one of those moments where you know it's kind of a lull. One of the questions, Suzette was asking, where can we learn more about the navigational housing and how to implement these programs?
Yeah, there's a couple of good videos that the city of San Francisco has put out, and there's starting to be some good, and they actually did a report the first year that they did the the modular trailers, a navigation center, and it's a really great report because it talks about just the the effectiveness of that model, and the numbers are really encouraging, that how many people that go through the program for 90 days, like a large percentage of them don't go back to homelessness. A large percentage, like 20% of the people that leave early, like less than 60 days, like I mean, people are in and out of jail if you're homeless. Like 20% of those that got rearrested after that, they spent less time in jail. There's just in the last 3 years now, there's really good data that shows that this model is really effective, and that getting people into permanent supportive housing, that's way more effective when they've gone through this program, because it's dealing with the trauma, and that's in my opinion, that's the biggest benefit of it. So yeah, so you can just I'll be glad to send that to Julie and Craig to distribute to you guys, and I have a kind of a resource list I can send as well.
Oh, that would be phenomenal, because I can send that out with the replay video for those who were unable to make it. Suzette also had a question about how are the navigational centers navigating the pandemic situation?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So a couple of the other projects that we've done with this same client, we've done a couple of COVID isolation centers, one at a naval base in Seattle, and one for the Yakima tribe in Washington. So what they've done is they've sort of used these two buildings as one as like a COVID isolation area, or they're just using the entire facility as COVID isolation. So now that things are kind of waning over the last several 6 months, those facilities we kind of transitioned back to standard shelter, the center shelter navigation center model, and they just do testing, and they do on-site vaccinations and everything as well.
That's amazing. How fast does it take in general for these structures to be erected?
They're erected in like less than 2 months. So you can, this would be like a 15 to 20,000 square foot 200 bed facility, and literally it's pouring the concrete, and and shipping these things from Calgary, Alberta is where the Sprung Structure is the name of the company. It's like an 80-year-old company. So that's literally the shipping, like cutting it from 1 week to two, from 2 weeks to 1 week was critical to getting these projects moving. Like that's how fast they go. And we would even do an early civil package where we just do foundations and grading, and get that to Caltrans, and they would approve it. It was really cool. Like the city of San Francisco, they were like, hey, we'd like to see the drawings, even though we're not, even though it's not our land, and it's state-owned property, and the permitting went all through Caltrans. They still got a courtesy review, but they did it really quickly. So there's a couple of ADA things that they wanted to see that were specific to San Francisco, so we made those changes. But it was, everybody was working together and working extremely fast. So the construction time of the actual structure was not the issue. It was really just getting the permitting done, which took less than a month.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dominic was wondering, are these managed by the city or contracted third parties, nonprofits? I'm adding nonprofits, like who's managing?
Yep. Yeah. So St. Vincent de Lima is the other Catholic-based through Catholic Charities operator that runs multiple other shelters in San Francisco or in the Bay Area. So they're the operator of Division Circle, And then there's, generally it's nonprofits, some religious based and some just that are operating these. So, and that's the city agencies really like that. Those folks really know how to do it. And then they have input on the design and also the program, the programming that occurs on the site. So they're almost all operated by an outside operator with experience.
With experience, okay.
Right.
Pam was wondering, what are the health implications of living in proximity to the highways?
Yeah, I know, and that's kind of a tough issue. There is more, statistically, it's there's a higher prevalence of cancer and lung disease and things like that when you're living close to basically a pollutant source. However, we do have like MERV 13 rated, which is really high rated filters on all the HVAC systems. They're all designed to have to exceed the minimum fresh air flushes during the day. So there's filtered fresh air, constantly being brought into these facilities. So that's probably the best we can do, to be honest, because we're using these leftover areas that are the kind of they're centrally located. That's the other thing too, is really you need to keep people close to bus lines and in the middle, in the middle of the city. However, I think we need to have, and the city of San Francisco is doing this, is they're really looking at building a navigation center kind of in every city ward, because it's kind of unfair to have all the shelter services in one area, and those residents and businesses have to kind of deal with it. So having a more spread out, kind of a distributed system of services is going to make it easier for folks to get access to those and not to be concentrating all those folks into one area.
Out of curiosity, I'm curious how much these cost.
Yeah, so they're between 50 and 60% less expensive than a standard conventional building, right? A CMU or a steel and stucco building. So and then that's on top of the reduction in construction time. So it's all of the Division I overhead and profit or overhead costs that the contractor has to deal with. Those are drastically reduced. Those are 50% less as well. So I think the Division Circle project, even with the second dorm that they built, I think the whole project was somewhere around $7 million. It's about as cheap as it gets.
Yeah, seriously. I like that you led with, it's 50%. I felt like we were already getting a discount on doing something really great.
Right.
That's a great way to lead.
Yeah.
There was another question here, and I don't know if Jay Miller wants to, I'm not quite sure if it's a question or a statement. It says, curious if any programs are being conducted inside of best success stories other than employment, such as entrepreneurial training for online businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I wish I really had a better answer. However, that was always our idea, is to be able to have some kind of vocational training, retraining going on. They do conduct parenting classes, and and they have on-site counseling, and they help people with resumes, and obviously they help them find housing and everything like that. Deal with outstanding debts and tickets and things like that. However, to my knowledge, there hasn't. It's just kind of too new of a model, I think. But I think it'd be really interesting to look around and see what some of these facilities have been open for a couple of years, if they do have any kind of on-site job training, because that's what we were hoping. And one of the ideas that we had is to do like an indoor vertical farm, right? Like a hydronic farm for leafy greens and vegetables. One of our clients, is a manufacturer, and being able to teach people how to be an urban farmer, or how to, even just fixing bicycles, fixing, what I mean, different crafts, different things that folks could some different things they could be learning to make them more employable. I think it'd be awesome to incorporate that in these facilities.
Thank you. I love all these questions. There are a couple of other questions. If you don't mind, Rick, will you take the screen share off?
Oh, yep, sure.
Then you'll be able to see everybody a little bit easier.
All right, sure.
All right. John was wondering, do you think these units are the solution, or is it the reduction? Is it reducing barriers of care? Can you speak more to navigating and getting more service providers to commit?
Sure. No, I don't think this is the solution. I think it's one of the important solutions. And I do think, having these larger navigation centers is the best way to, alleviating reducing, the tent encampments and the chronic homeless that are, everybody's seeing them much more regularly than we were a few years ago. The recession and the pandemic, just really put a hurt on that population, but it also really put a hurt on a lot of these service providers, right? That are now they're not just providing services to homeless, they're providing services to, their food kitchens are feeding working families now. You know what I mean? And those resources are getting getting really, really stretched. So I think that it's really a whole continuum of all of these solutions that need to be implemented, and see what works the best. And in Las Vegas, one of the best models is converting old motels. It's cheap. They get some subsidies from the city, and they get a bunch of volunteers, and Home Depot donates some, a lot of money, and renovate a motel, and now you've got, emergency housing like right there, so.
That's the opportunity with motels, usually those rooms are, 230 square feet, to 340, 400, and really the conversion there can be quite simple. And FYI, if you're looking to create, some housing in your target market for, the service employees, the service workers, the backbone of a community, that is a great, a viable option for you to look into. Been looking into it myself. Was up on a roof recently with a contractor, trying to find out how can we solve problems. So definitely something for, not just for a potential emergency homeless solution, but also for creating some more affordable units within your markets. And those are acts of love, like it's a heavy lift. There's a lot going on. And so definitely not something you want to just take on necessarily by yourself, unless you have like your contractor experience behind you and things like that. John was asking, how do you get the service providers actually on site?
Well, it's just meaning the actual operators of the.
John, if you want to clarify, feel free. In my mind, when I read your question, I was thinking, like you mentioned, is some of these, opportunities that you have, some of the health and human welfare, people that are coming and visiting and such.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So the actual navigation center offices, they have enclosed offices, meeting rooms, and also just like cubicles and systems furniture was the word I was looking for. And those are like reserved for those different community partners, so they can come in, 2-3 days a week, and they have a space where they can operate, and so they kind of have a desk space or an office space, and then some of them have permanent employees there as well. So sometimes it can be 2, 3, 4 different agencies that are nonprofits and city departments, that have people coming and going or stationed there.
Awesome. Jeff had a really interesting question. And you're so engrossed in this. I think you might have a good understanding of how to answer this. What prevents private companies from participating? Do you think that companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google are disinterested? Do they see liability issues or other barriers from participating?
No, I don't think so. Just from my experience, it's just been all public agency, but it's because it's such a huge problem, that they're really working hard to get out in front of it. So I'm not entirely aware of what some of the larger companies are doing. However, I have heard or have read that in Seattle and Portland that that those Google and Amazon and so forth, those big companies are they're actually building affordable housing, not just for their market rate housing for their employees, but they're also building affordable housing because they're acknowledging that, like, we're bringing all of these high-tech, high-paid employees in here, and we're just gentrifying huge areas of these cities, which is sort of good and bad, right? It's eating up the affordable stock of housing, and we saw that in Las Vegas when Zappos moved downtown. There was literally a single resident occupancy, an SRO apartment building in downtown Las Vegas. It's the only one in Nevada, as far as I know, and Zappos just bought it. They're like, hey, we can have our call center, employees live there. They'd be okay living in 180 square feet. So they just bought it and kicked everybody out. So I think there is a huge potential for those companies to come in and say, yes, we're gonna subsidize this, or at least be part of the investing team to build and renovate affordable housing.
Speaking of affordable housing, and if I am recalling correctly, I think Amazon is doing that in the Seattle area right now. And just in my local neck of the woods, a local ski resort recently purchased a large facility so that they could create the housing for their employees.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a problem with the solution.
Yeah. And it's not just a PR, social responsibility thing. They're like, it's a like, our employees don't have anywhere to live, so
yes,
it's a bottom line decision.
It is. Rick, I just want to thank you. This has been just such a wealth of information. I think everyone, just based off of the questions that are being answered and the engagement, I think everyone is really growing and gained a lot of insight. And I know so many of these people personally that I'm like, wow, I know that this will have a ripple effect, because you give, we just transfer this idea and it'll iterate. It's just super powerful. I want to let everyone know just a couple of things before we hop off. I am dropping a link to Ryan Holiday, the Daily Stoic. I'm a big fan of his, but I was listening to a podcast episode of his just this morning, and it had to do with like social responsibility. I'm not promoting it as to what you should believe or think or anything like that, but it's definitely a way to like just expand your mind on this topic a little bit further. And it's very short, it's like 10 minutes. So I encourage you to, check that out, listen to it. And Rick, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Can you drop your favorite contact in the chat box? And I think we decided we wanted to take a screenshot because that's like the Zoomy thing is a cool thing to do. So if you want to join our screenshot, go ahead and show your beautiful faces, and Camilla's going to snag a couple, and we have a couple pages. So I think we'll probably have to take a couple shots.
All right, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Hang on. Try again. Try again. Yeah, I'm good at this. Don't worry. 1, 2, 3. Okay, gotcha.
Awesome. Nina, do you want to drop us a quick note as to maybe some of the guests that we might be having coming up soon?
Yes, sure. And sorry, my voice is off, but let me just check 1 second. I have the lineup, our next lineup, so that I don't.
And while Nina's pulling that up, I want to encourage everyone. We learn about amazing people because you guys share amazing people with us. We know amazing people, but we know even more amazing people. So again, Craig and I are having a great conversation. And next thing you know, I'm talking to Rick, and now I know that Rick is not just awesome, but he's from my hometown, which everyone is from there, right? That's our joke in Modesto. You're from there.
Well, thank you so much, Julie and Camilla and Craig. You guys are awesome, and I'm. This seems like a fantastic group. So I think just and our company is a a benefit corporation. So so we really make a point to do good for the environment and for the community, and it's just awesome to see this many amazing people looking for ways to improve lives for others. So thank you for this opportunity today.
Rick, we might need to invite you back to speak just to green building and such, and maybe that's a very hot topic for a lot of us in this group.
I'd be glad to.
Nina?
Yes, no problem. So thanks, Julie, and thanks everyone. And so our next guest speaker will be Chad Shepler from a company called Storybuilt. He is the CEO of that company, and it's clearly we know this company through our smart building technology world, and we're very excited to have him on the show. I think it will be on January 31st. So.
Awesome. We decided that we are not going to be meeting at the end of December, the last Monday of December, because, well, it's a really hectic time and a lot of people are taking a little holiday time with their families, and we want to make sure that everybody has their needs met in every which way.
Yeah, and Julie just wanted to add about the Storybuilt company, and Jeff Hawk, my husband, who's also part of this network, helped me with some of this. So the Storybuilt is a rapid growth REIT with focus on multifamily, and they also do smaller modular homes. So it's very exciting. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me, Jeff, Julie, and Camilla.
Fantastic. I want to thank everyone for their time. Again, Rick, thank you for generously sharing your time, knowledge, and experience with our group. I will be saving, if you want to save the chat box, grab it right now before we leave. I will send the chat along with the replay video to everyone who is registered. And until January, wish everyone very merry, happy holidays and a happy new year. And we will see you January 29th. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.